Welcome everyone to Buddha's Center. It's Sunday. We're talking about Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. We're so fortunate that Khyentse Geshe Wandak spent a ton of time on this text with us so that we have an understanding. We were just talking about it at a kind of very, very coarse level that allows us then to have our minds loosen up a bit and be able to kind of dive deeper into this text and understand more about the teachings for beings of three capacities. And we were receiving teachings on bodhicitta this morning, and I was thinking about just how indispensable, how important the section that we're currently on is. We aren't on a section that deals with Mahayana. We're on the section dealing with the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, which is the section that deals with the teachings that are in common with Hinayana and Mahayana. So we would say the hearer and solitary realizer teachings, those teachings that the Buddha gave at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma that show us how to, be free from suffering altogether, how to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and achieve an abiding nirvana. And these teachings that we sometimes kind of overlook or think are too coarse for us because we're more interested in compassion, or we're not really interested in having to think about suffering so much. These teachings just become what is that ground for us to be able to relate to others with, that ground for us to be able to see all of our potentiality, all of our potential behaviors, and why the behaviors that we have are happening, and why the behaviors that we're engaging in, if they are not stopped, will create seeds of habituation in our mind that will grow even larger than they currently are when they're placed into our mental consciousness. And then suddenly we're someone who their whole life is angry, as opposed to just having it, only happening sometimes, or will be someone who their whole life is lustful, who just can't stop it because of an indulgence, maybe of inappropriate attention in this life or in another life, where the seeds were planted and then grew into a much larger behavioral problem. So when we start to see why we act the way that we do, and the potential for the various ways of acting that we can have based on the activities that we engage in and what we habituate our minds with, when we look at the 12 links of dependent origination, and we look at how this whole kind of gig of samsara occurs, and occurs for us at our own personal level, and we see that we have to look far beyond. Now we're in the 6 types of suffering, and we have to look far beyond just kind of our day-to-day what's going on if we want to get a picture of what we definitely want to emerge from. And when we get that bigger picture, then that bigger picture that's so personal to us, that we relate to ourselves, we're the closest to ourselves, it becomes so personal to us that it saturates our mind, and our mind starts to operate in a way where we see why we're experiencing the things that we are, because they're based on concordant things we did before, these results that are occurring. And we start to be able to then understand why we're having interactions with people that are displeasing to us. And we stop blaming everyone as much. We start to see it's our karma. It's our karma and our afflictions. It's these seeds that are giving rise to the experience that's concordant with something that I did before. So this kind of blaming aspect starts to loosen up our mind enough to be able to then move towards wanting them to have happiness and be free from suffering. It starts to understand, oh, okay, there's a part in this that I'm playing, and this part that I'm playing in it is a seed. It's some sort of a ripening result of a karma. And how could it have occurred? How could this thing that's happening to me have occurred? It could only have occurred if I did something to harm the mind of somebody else in a way that comes back at me verbally, or in a way that comes back at me in a way that makes my mind hurt. So I begin to understand that you're not to blame. Enemy or distasteful person, you're not to blame. And now you're engaging in exactly what I must have done, something like, in order for you to show up. So I start to see that the experiences that I'm having are directly related to some seed that I put in. And then I start to see that the person that's reacting in a certain way is putting a seed in his or her continuum that's going to ripen into what I'm experiencing. So it starts to build a bigger bridge towards others, but it starts with our own personal accountability. And it doesn't say that, no one's doing anything externally. That's not the point that I'm making. I'm not saying that everything is just mind. But what I'm saying is there's no way, if I didn't have the karma, to have something difficult happening to me in terms of another person, for it to happen. I would have had to have created something in a previous time to create this experience of harm, seeming harm, or harm, this experience. I must have done something to make this. So now I feel a certain way. This is making my mind, really not at ease. So now my mind's not at ease because of a way that someone's talking to me. And I recognize that it's because of a way that I was probably talking to someone. And now their mind is not only not at ease while they're angry and yelling, because we know that it's an affliction, and an affliction is a disturbed state of mind. So we know there's a bunch of stuff happening simultaneously when we study the Dharma well enough. We know that we're experiencing it because of a ripening result of something that we've created. They're experiencing it because of some sort of ripening habituation. They're angry yelling, they're planting the seed to experience something later. Their mind's disturbed at that moment because they're angry. And there's a lot of suffering there and in the future that's going on in front of me. And the only way that I could see that is if I had studied enough to understand that that's how it's all working for me. And to understand that this kind of model of, cause and concordant results, and ripening results, environmental results, habitual results, all of these things that we learn about when we study karma aren't random and don't come from nowhere. And they have very specific causes that give rise to them. And, trying to figure out, without an omniscient mind, exactly what those things were that makes this bad experience happen is quite difficult. But you can, when you study logic, or if you are at all logical, you see that when you plant a seed of corn, corn comes. You plant a seed of apple, apple comes. You don't get an apple tree from a corn seed. And this is how cause and effect works. There has to be something. You don't put milk with milk and then suddenly have chocolate milk. You have to have things that come together that make the result into what it is. It doesn't random. This isn't the way that it works. This moment's consciousness isn't randomly created. It's created by a previous moment's consciousness. This experience isn't randomly created. It's created by some sort of a projection, some sort of an imprint in my mind that's projecting an experience. That's my own personal experience. That's like no one else's. And that own personal experience that's like no one else's is because I have my own varieties of causes to create the varieties of results that are all of my own, that mathematically just there's so many different predispositions that can give rise within a continuum. It's always going to be my own personal experience of my I, of this I that's here, my own experience of it, So, and when I start to deconstruct this idea that there's some inherently existent I and some inherently existent other, then that falls into the play too. When I can start to deconstruct, not only at the level of, a more gross level of, okay, this is the karma then you can start to, look at it in terms of, well, what is the nature of what's going on here? Why is there such a, an uncomfortable feeling in my mind because there's some noise happening? What is it about that specific noise that seems to be harming me at somewhere I can't even point to that's so deep? And that place that I can't point to that's so deep is the grasping, self-grasping ignorance. It's so deep. It's just our sensory consciousness, everything's appearing objectively existent. I'm appearing objectively existent. And it's from that self-grasping ignorance that then I have the inappropriate attention and over-exaggeration, the afflictions and the contaminated karmas. And then this result of the I that's here talking to you on a screen, that's had a various series of, life's trials and tribulations and good times and so forth, just like everyone else. But I have my own personal set of experiences that I use to try to relate to how this whole thing could be put together and end from the perspective of this I suffering. The Buddha's I just doesn't have anything contaminated. There's no defilements. There's nothing there to make the I have to suffer or not experience bliss. It's only the stuff to make the bliss that the Buddha's I gets. And this is what we figure out within Madhyamaka philosophy, that we aren't negating, everything doesn't just disappear. It's just the wisdom realizing emptiness. The wisdom factor gets applied. And then there's a different understanding of the mode of subsistence of everything at a conventional level. It's no longer, running in the same way, but it's still running, it's still operating. And the Buddha is still able to experience bliss and emanate bodies and have compassion, because there is something operating, that karma operating, dependent arising operating. And the dependent arising the Buddha's operating from is just a better version. It's a pure version. It's not the screwed up version that we're operating from. The Buddha has karma. It's just not contaminated. The Buddha's but dependent arising doesn't just end. It keeps happening. Actions in the mind and everything is the mind is still reflecting and knowing. It's just pure. It's dependently originated purity, reflection, knowing, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But this is what we're striving for. And we have this mind that, is moving from moment to moment, and it's inhabiting a body that unfortunately is impermanent at a very gross, coarse level. It wouldn't take very much for me right in front of you right now to no longer be alive. I mean, this, something internally can collide, the heart stops working, or something in head, something can happen, or bleed just a little too long, or not breathe just a little too long. And these kind of things can make an abrupt early ending to life. But then again, also, even if it lasts as long as anyone's ever made it last, we're still moving so quickly towards the end of our life. If it's going to be 100 years, that's what we pray to Tara. May we live, see 100 masters, live 100 years, etc. This is what we're looking at, and we're talking about beginningless lives. So we're talking about a blip, and in that blip, there's a blip. There's like up to like 100 years blip, but there's been beginningless. So when we start to, see how kind of heavy that is, what are we going to do? We don't have a lot of time. And this is what the Lam Rim does for us. It gives us realistic kind of plan, makes us have realistic plans, makes us put things together in a way that, okay, this is a blip, but I've got the blip. It's not to say that, this is this precious blip. this somehow or another, through my series of lives, I must have made some nice aspirations and engaged in ethics and engaged in the other perfections in some way, and been guided by a teacher in some way, to be able to have this manifestation take place. And I'm in a position that Arya Bodhisattvas, pray, that are in Pure Lands, pray to be born into, to be able to, hear and see the suffering and work within. I'm in a position that, holy beings want to be in. I'm not a holy being, though. But I could become one in this position. That's what's really, really wild, is that in this short life, Milarepa, in that short life, was able to rely upon a perfect teacher, have had some pretty darn good karma previously, obviously, and had received teachings in that life, but went a little astray, as we know, but was able to, with the body, create, the end, make from a body like mine, the end of suffering, and permanent bliss within his continuum. And we can do the same exact thing if we rely upon the exact stages of the path that are necessary to get there, and we don't leave any of the steps out. If we think that we're going to have just some miraculous discovery because we're special, we'll know if we're special, and we'll be able to read Nagarjuna like it's, a comic strip. If it doesn't read so simply, then maybe you'll need to do it the way everyone else has to do it. If you ever, have, get angry or frustrated, then you probably are someone who needs to, work at it in a way that is gradual, in a way that will work. And I feel so blessed that Khyentse Geshe Wandak was so kind to just give us little spoonfuls at a time and not overwhelm us, with too much. Just give us what we needed a little bit at a time. And I was talking yesterday, about, what is it that, made it, so, I don't know, just like have such an effect on my mind, or, have my mind really be able to look at this whole path in a way where, I would love to sit here for 40 hours and just talk, what happened there? Why is it like that? And and I really had to analyze it. What's the difference? If I had gone and gotten a PhD, there's just so much more information that there would seemingly be known, but it doesn't seem like it worked out like that. It just doesn't seem like in the scheme of the way that things worked out, it worked out like that. And I had to go back to, it's because Khyentse Geshe Wandak, for 25 years, little by little, not for a 2-year program, not for a 4-year program, not an 8-year program, for 25 years, twice a week, then at the end, once a week, every week, except for some extreme circumstances that happened in my life from like 1997 on, I stayed with Khyentse Geshe Wandak and sat there and listened, and had trouble translating, and wanted to not be the translator, and he insisted that I be the translator. And yeah, and it was through having a little spoonful at a time, and sitting there, not stopping the sitting there, and having the information really make a difference on my mind, where I couldn't imagine not going and getting that medicine week to week. And so many things in my life, music, different kinds of music, art, other kinds of literature, meant so much to me at points. But then just something else meant more. And then something else meant more. But the Dharma, because of the kindness of Rinpoche, because he was just so skilled at shaping, all I can speak about is this eye, like, I don't know your eye. I don't even, you all might be enlightened, I don't know. I might have been the only one who had the evolving to do. And if that's the case, thank you for your support. I appreciate that. And maybe it's still the story, but this is just, it's been such a blessing and a blessing that just keeps, even though Rinpoche has been gone almost, almost a year and 3/4, almost 2 years now, whatever. It's just his teachings just keep coming, and I keep seeing the depth of them, and keep just feeling just, and the teaching on bodhicitta this morning with Geshe Dorje Damdu, and the last teachings on the, he's been teaching equalizing and exchanging self with others, and we went so deep into that practice before, and I've studied it in Panchen Sonandrapa's texts, and it's all because of the kindness of Khenser Geshe Wandak and Geshe Lobsang Gompo. And now studying with Geshe Dorje Damdu, it's like hearing a song. You turn on like the radio sometimes, and there's certain songs you hear that you just can't help, but they like you get into it every time for some reason. I don't know what that is, but now it's happening with certain Dharma teachings where it's just like I'm captivated by it, and I just want to, like, I don't know, it's because of Rinpoche's kindness. And I'm not trying to say like I have some bodhicitta now or renunciation, but I'm just trying to share with you my experience of spending time consistently with a qualified Lama, and a qualified Lama who knows exactly what you need, when you need it, and how you need it, and doesn't run you out of the place. Just keeps being patient. Never, is that quality of the Mahayana teacher says, is never becomes tired of saying the same thing over and over again. It's one of the qualities, is abandoned dispiritedness. It's a big word in the Mahayana Sutra Alankara. What does this mean? It means that they don't get tired of saying the same thing over and over and over again. If you ask them a question and you've asked them 1 million times before the same question, they should feel, oh, maybe this time they'll be able to like move them even further, towards that freedom from suffering and that blissful state. What an opportunity. Rinpoche always, he would say, understand there are persons of 3 capacities, small, medium, and great. And he would say this like he'd never said it before. And he'd say it like every single teaching. He would quote a Tisha and he would go, oh, remember? He'd go, oh, man. Like he'd never said this 1 million times before. And he would say, oh, virtuous deeds lead to happiness and non-virtuous deeds lead to suffering. Like this was something that he, was so no one had ever heard before. And that's the thing that just really always got me. I would sit there and I'd say, he's saying the same thing again. As a translator, I'd be like, I would not have abandoned dispiritedness. I would think, when's the new material coming about refuge? Especially on a tour or something. Oh man, I think when's the new drop? When are the new hits coming? And wow, I look back on that naive child that thought there were new hits that didn't. And now it's so strange because I say it now. I think like just when I was saying it, it was almost like tears came to my eyes when I said virtue causes happiness, non-virtue causes suffering. Just incredible. And this is what we take with us when someone's screaming at us. We say, virtue causes happiness, non-virtue causes suffering. I'm experiencing this because of non-virtue before. They're creating something that's going to create suffering. Wow. In the language of the gods, nagas, and yaksas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Lai ke dan lu dan no jin ke drubun da dan mi ke nan dan drwa gun ji dra nan ji tsam ba dan je ke du da gi ju den do. Now imagine that you bring all sentient beings here to be your guest. We'll share this gift. Rinpoche was so generous with us. Dalai Lama is so generous. Now you just have to turn on the live thing when he comes on. It's there for you. It's so generous with the Dharma. We're so fortunate to have Geshe Dorje Damdula in our lives and teaching us, and Umzala Geshe Aga and Geshe Malatenzen Ladran. We're so fortunate to have these beings in our lives teaching us exactly what we need. So many people teach us stuff, but it really, how many of them teach us something that can end ours and everyone's suffering forever and bring you to a real state of satisfaction, ease, bliss, happiness? we're we're really lucky to have people who care enough about us to share these kinds of things, not to just share how to, you know, I don't know, fill in the blank, things you've learned, not just share that, but share something that really, really works. And they know it does because they have tasted it. And yeah, that's something different. Imagine you bring every single sentient being here and share this with them: hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods. Try to bring as many beings as you can think of here, all the various types of beings, thinking about their various sufferings, stopping just for a moment to be able to hear these teachings. Now you and all sentient beings get in the 7-point Vairocana posture. We're going to try to just get our minds calmed down enough to be able to hear these teachings in the fullest way, to be able to then invite the merit field here in a way that we can pay attention to it and leave the strongest imprints within our mind. You and all sentient beings are in the 7-point Vairocana posture. And now focus your mind inwardly, no longer focusing on sentient beings around you. Each and every one of them are doing the same and hearing this instruction in their own individual languages. So now you focus in on your own mind and trying to achieve eventually what's called calm abiding, where the mind is abiding on an internal object that's calmed outside distraction. And eventually that internal object will be emptiness, the mind's emptiness, clear light mind's emptiness. So now we'll begin to focus on the breath, breathing in, filling the lungs and the diaphragm all the way to the top, gently turning it around and exhale in a very natural fashion. But make sure that you're filling your lungs and your diaphragm all the way. You're taking full breaths. His Holiness the Dalai Lama's commentary in Kamalashila Stages of Meditation talks about this, making sure that you're extending it all the way in and all the way out, but not doing it in a hurried fashion. You shouldn't hear the breath going in and out of your nostrils in kind of a loud way, unless, of course, you have a cold. It should be in a very natural fashion, not forced. It's funny when we think about meditating on the breath, we immediately start to try to control the breath. And this is something that we should try to allow it to be as natural as possible whilst taking the deep breaths. So we're going to breathe in and breathe out, and on the exhale, count the breath. It'll be our focal object, and just make sure that your mind's not scattering or sleepy and dull. We've talked about the problems in meditation before, so I won't go into the instruction about that. And just have that spy in your mind, making sure that the mind isn't busy and distracted and excited or sleepy and dull, and is really mindfully kept on the object of observation of breathing in and out and the counting. So we'll get our minds, just kind of allow our whole mind and our body to settle in, calm down, and become the most kind of open vessel we can to the teaching, where we have those qualities of open-mindedness and intelligence and can then put the effort in. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni appears in the space in front of you, arm length away or so, the size of your thumb, eye height, beautiful and radiant. And imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni then, from Buddha Shakyamuni, who's containing the entire merit field, the merit field begins to assemble in the space in front of you as well. Imagining Buddha Shakyamuni there, beautiful, glowing, radiant. Imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Imagining Kensur Geshe Wanda, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Dema Loche Rinpoche, Kensur Lobsang Gyatso. Imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, Umzala Geshe Aga, Geshe Milatenzin Ladrin, Jeffrey Hopkins, Chado Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all beings you consider holy enlightened beings, imagining them in the space in front of you. Imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Vasubandhu and Dignaga and Dharmakirti and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Gunaprabha, Shakyaprabha, Lama Salempa and Lord Atisha. Imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva and Baba Vega and Chandrashita, Kamala Shila, Lama Salempa, Lord Atisha. All of these holy beings in the space in front of you. We're so fortunate that Lord Atisha came into this world, came to Tibet, and wrote the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment and showed us how to combine all of these lineage into practical instructions. All of these things are instructions to practice, and we see no contradiction in the teachings. Imagine the beings of the lineage of blessings passed down from Lord Vajradhara to Sarahama Tripa, Tulupa, Naropa, Lutsawa Marpa, Jitsumilarepa, and Gampopa. These holy beings. Imagine that Lord Atisha is passing the Lamrim lineage that we're all part of, this whole lineage that traces back through the Nalanda Pandits all the way to Buddha Shakyamuni. We're part of this spiritual family, and we imagine that we are there when Lord Atisha is passing down this lineage to Dron Tompa, the lay Lama. Imagining now all the three old Kadampa lineages, the holy beings of the Nyingma, the Padmasambhava, Sakya, Sakya Kunganimpo, Sakya Pandita, Kaji lineages, the Karmapas, Kagalupa lineage, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtap J, Joseph J, Basu Chuji Jetson, Panchen Sonandrapa, Jayan Cheba, Janja Rilpi Dorje, Gonju Jimmy Wambo, Jitsumba, Pabajo, Seventh Dalai Lama, all of these holy beings, imagine them in the space in front of you. Passing down these teachings, passing down the extensive deeds lineage, passing down the profound view lineage, as Rinpoche did to us, did for us. He was so kind. Be able to teach us about grounds and paths and results and the Vinaya, and then also put that ornament of the wisdom realizing emptiness at the highest level Nagarjuna spoke about from the profound view lineage. We're so fortunate that Kensur Geshe Wandak came to the West, came to the United States and taught us these things. Imagining the high Shiva Tantra deities, Yoga Tantra deities, Performance Tantra deities, Action Tantra deities, all the 35 Buddhas and all of the different protector deities, imagining them in the space in front of you. Leaving these imprints in our mind every time by reciting their names and by thinking about the texts that they wrote and thinking about how connected we are to these beings will allow us to, in our future lives, always connect with these types of teachings, always connect with this lineage. Now you've imagined all hell, hungry, ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods. All beings are here. All sentient beings you brought here to share the gift of the Dharma with them in order to see the merit field. Imagine that all sentient beings see all the enlightened beings in the space in front of them and are inspired by beings who've removed the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, who now have perfect love, compassion, skillful means, power, wisdom, perfected, and a perfect loving concern for every single sentient being that hasn't removed the afflictive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience. We will become exactly like these beings that we're imagining in the space in front of us. We can only imagine them, but whenever we call the merit field, they actually appear. The omniscient beings appear. We just don't have the karma to be able to see it. And eventually, when we become a Buddha, we will be part of the merit field, and we will be looking after all sentient beings and trying to figure out the best way in order to help them remove all of their afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, because we'll have become the reliable guide, and we all will become reliable guides. We all have Buddha nature. We have a natural Buddha nature and a proliferating Buddha nature. Our mind is empty of inherent existence, just like the Buddha's Dharmakaya mind is empty of inherent existence. The same exact nature of my mind is the nature of the Buddha's mind. The only difference is that my mind hasn't proliferated or matured into the state of the Buddha's mind and still has adventitious defilements. But these defilements that are in my mind can be removed, can be distilled into the purity that the Buddha's mind has been distilled into, because my mind's the exact same nature as the Buddha's mind. My mind isn't stuck. My mind isn't stuck in defilement. My mind just has defilements. Defilements can be removed because my mind is empty of inherent existence. These stains are adventitious. These stains aren't the nature of my mind. The nature of my mind is that which is unsullied. The nature of my mind is clear and knowing. The nature of clear light, unsullied. This is its nature, and unfortunately, it just hasn't been distilled. I haven't recognized its pure nature. That seed of perfection hasn't germinated into the state of Buddhahood. I haven't woken up. And when I wake up, I will be part of the merit field and be able to be the most reliable guide in the universe. So we have to have this confidence in the path, have this confidence in ourselves, recognize that our mind isn't that kind of dirty, awful state that comes up at times when we say, oh, how could a mind like mine ever become enlightened? These things that happen in our mind are impermanent. All impermanent things are caused. When we look at how an angry thought comes up, it's because there's something there that's concordant with an angry thought. And if I remove that seed, if I remove that thing within my mind that is concordant with an angry thought, then there's no seed for an angry thought to come up. And this is how we learn that this mind itself can be purified, because the things within it that are impermanent are coming about because of a cause of some sort. And when we trace it all the way back, why would I be so angry? Why could I be so attached? How come I could be so prideful? How come I could become so jealous? We'll find that the evil mastermind behind all of it is the self-grasping ignorance. This idea that myself, the self of person, and all phenomena inherently exist, objectively exist right in the object, exists somehow established by way of its own character. I'm established by way of my own character. You're established by way of your own character. That rock over there is established by way of its own character. So then I make decisions based on that I think makes sense, because I believe everything objectively exists from its own side, has some sort of independent nature. So then I begin to exaggerate how I think about that thing, how I think about myself, how that thing makes me feel about myself. And that thing and myself both lack inherent existence, yet I grasp at them both as having some objective existence from their own side. And it's this misapprehension that starts the whole relationship that is the problem, that allows me then to think that's a more special rock than that, and I should protect that rock, and I should be attached to that rock and not that rock, because I somehow see that things have some inherent nature from their own side, some establishment, something by way of that object that makes sense for me to overvalue it versus that. And so when I overvalue it, I become attached to it, or I overvalue it in a negative way and I hate it. And then based on those feelings, based on those afflicted states of mind, I then act and react in ways that create negative karma, contaminated karma, that gives rise to cyclic existence. So in order to undo this misapprehension, we have to understand what the Buddha meant at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. So with this in mind, with thinking about, do things have independence? Are they inherently existent? Is something inherently findable here within my aggregates or outside of my aggregates, which is inherently existent self of person Jeff. We're not, the object of negation isn't Jeff. The object of negation is inherent existence. The basis of designation is Jeff. The object of negation is inherent existence. The basis of designation is the mind and body of Jeff. That's the basis of designation, my mind and body, the basis of designating a name Jeff. So is there Jeff findable in that basis of designation or somewhere outside of it? We got to check. This is what the Buddha is saying. When we start to try to find inherent existence, we try to find this independent thing that so naturally appears to us about ourselves and everything else. It doesn't seem like we can find it, but then we have to recognize that there is something here. There's a mode of subsistence that's occurring. It's just not occurring the way that we think it is. And this is what the Heart Sutra is talking about, that all phenomena lack this nature of inherent existence, but all phenomena exist. If it's a phenomena, if it's a dependent arising, it exists. So for it to be a dependent arising, it has to exist. So emptiness is being posited on an existent. So we can't say that it's canceling something out that exists altogether. It's just canceling a mode of subsistence out. It's not, emptiness isn't canceling the thing, because then there wouldn't be a dependent arising for something to be empty. So this is the middle way that we have to come to understand, that the dependent arising should make us see that it's empty, and that the empty should make us see there's an existent. So this is what hopefully we figure out in the Heart Sutra sooner or later. After year after year of trying to read and trying to look at Chandrakirti and looking at all of the different tenet systems and so forth, we will have to arrive at the Madhyamaka Prasangika view. We have no choice. Every view that isn't Madhyamaka Prasangika falls to nihilism, eternalism. It just does. If it falls to eternalism, it falls to nihilism. And if it falls to nihilism, we find some eternalism there. So the only really safe path is the middle way path of the Madhyamaka Prasangika. But if misinterpreted, the computer is about to die. If misinterpreted, this computer needs to be plugged in. It's going to die, the Zoom. So if we misinterpret it, then anyway. So I lost my train of this one needs to go in. Hold on. Here it is. No, there's like 300 wires in front of me. How could we not? Okay. And screen share. I hope everybody's having a good day today. It's fantastic that we get to look at a text like this and that we have an interest in a text like this. Okay, so we're all wired and plugged in. I almost lost you all. It was close, but crisis averted. Just move it over. That's fine. Okay. Now the wires are moving wires. Okay. Am I crooked? The Sutra of the Heart of, oh, wait, waiting for screen share. Cool. All right, so explicitly, emptiness, stuff I was just talking about. Implicitly, 5 paths: path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, path of no more learning. A whole bunch of points to be made about those paths, but we'll save that for another day. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. The same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature, form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, conscious, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way, Te ata on gate gate parakate parasangati buddhi soha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jube nejo damba nengo she duchu ngai dudo jentu baba lama yibu shenzi negdun kandro so la shatselo agasamara jesandara samara be agasamara jes. Agasamara jesandara samara ya ve de adon gati gati parasangati bodhiso ababa konchuson jigai de medoje she labadoje mebadoje shewadoje jagi baje medoje danje dengaye so yeren danja jejo jewa da medon ve jendan jewa dan domba junjin bonzon zonjo ji tashi de jan den da de le jo. Mandala offering is request the teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready. Shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. It's really so important, this section, again, on the medium scope, where we learn about the 4 noble truths. We learn about the truth of suffering, really for the first time at its most extensive level. In the medium scope, we learn about the lower realm suffering and have a general idea that we better do something about all of it in the small scope. In the sections, obviously, Lama Tsongkhapa covers a lot of stuff in that small scope, and kind of points us towards, the Buddha's kind of where we want to end up. But really, the points of these practices are to show us how to, abandon the lower realms. And then when we get to this medium scope, it's when we see that cyclic existence is a problem altogether. And in Lama Tsongkhapa's Three Principal Paths, he says that, listen with a clear mind, you fortunate ones who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence. That's tough. Strive to make good use of leisure and opportunity. So you're saying that this life I have isn't meant to just go out and have the best time I can. It's Tsongkhapa's leading second stanza of Three Principal Paths. Those of you who are fortunate enough to not be attached to the joys of cyclic existence, so what do you mean? This is before he even says it's a problem. So he's setting groundwork, saying, listen, make use of this thing that you have. And we see in the Foundation of All Good Qualities by Tsongkhapa, he leads with that. This life of leisure and opportunity I have is so difficult to find, so easily lost, so valuable. May I take its essence night and day. Here, make good use of this leisure and opportunity. Second stanza, take its essence, And then it says, without pure renunciation, an end to attraction for the pleasures of cyclic existence is unattainable. So first he says, hey, all you who aren't attracted to the joys of cyclic existence. And then you're like, well, who's he talking to? And then it says, well, you can't, without the way you would go about, not being attached to the joys of cyclic existence would be if you had renunciation. Well, how would you get renunciation? It says, without pure renunciation, an end to attraction for the pleasures of cyclic existence is unattainable. The craving for existence also binds beings. Thus, from the outset, seek renunciation. Reverse attraction to this life by reflecting on how leisure and opportunity are difficult to find and how life is ephemeral and without span. Reverse attraction to future lives by repeatedly thinking of the infallibility of karma and its effects and the miseries of samsara. Contemplating thus, when for an instant you do not admire the splendors of cyclic existence. So he starts by saying, oh, all, you fortunate ones who aren't attached to the splendors of cyclic existence, the joys of cyclic existence. So I'd be fortunate if I had to renunciate. I'd be a fortunate one. That would be really fortunate for me. I want to, in my whole life is spent trying to find things that are fortunate for me. And now I could become fortunate by somehow not being attached to the joys of cyclic existence. How would I become someone who's fortunate? I would have to study the Four Noble Truths. I would have to study this is the superior truth of suffering, so that I could, contemplating thus, when for an instant you do not admire the splendors of cyclic existence and remain intent on liberation day and night, renunciation is born in you then. So we see that renunciation is the foundation for bodhicitta. Rinpoche always said, renunciation is wanting to get out of your own suffering, and compassion is then turning that towards someone else and wanting to get them out of their suffering. And then bodhicitta is the big one, wanting to get all sentient beings out of their suffering to a state of bliss. And it says, renunciation, if not tempered by a pure mind of bodhicitta, however, will not bring forth the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise ones generate the excellent mind of bodhicitta. And then how do they do it? How does someone then generate the mind of bodhicitta? Tsongkhapa is such a great writer. He makes it, if you study the bigger Lamrim and then you look at this, it's just like, wow, how did he do this? He baits you and then he tells you, and then he baits you and then he tells you. He's like, well, if you don't have bodhicitta with your renunciation, then you can't have bliss. So, okay, now, all right, so if I want to be fortunate, I need to not be attached to the joys of cyclic existence. Only people who aren't attached to the joys of cyclic existence are those who have renunciation. So in order to be fortunate, I'd have to get renunciation. And then if I want bliss, I have to have renunciation tempered with a mind of bodhicitta, with it. So then how do I do that? Well, it goes back to what I just meditated on to get renunciation. Swept up in the current of the four powerful rivers, birth, aging, sickness, and death, tied by the strong bonds of karma, so hard to undo. Well, that's what I just found out about myself. I have birth, aging, I have 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings. Become so clear on that about myself. Tied by strong bonds of karma, so hard to undo. The Four Noble Truths, how you're bound to cyclic existence, the first 2 truths. How you're unbound from cyclic existence, the second, set of the third and fourth truth. So the first truth, truth of suffering, truth of origin, shows how we're bound to cyclic existence. The truth of cessation and truth of path shows us how we're unbound from cyclic existence. Unbinding from cyclic existence is very, very hard because it's been since beginningless time that we've had self-grasping ignorance that's caused it to occur. Tied by strong bonds of karma, hard to undo. We know, we've learned this, the 12 links of dependent origination, this section that we're in, we've learned this all about ourselves. If you just took this out, you could put it over in the medium scope. And it's talking about bodhicitta right now, but it's talking about what you learned about yourself about someone else. Caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the darkness of ignorance. The medium scope, you learn that ignorance starts the 12 links, completely envelops you and makes you then create some kind of action and plant it. Contaminated one that gives rise to samsara. This web, the darkness of ignorance that doesn't allow you to see that this is even going on. Well, it doesn't allow them to see that it's going on either. So important. Born and reborn in boundless cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the 3 miseries. Still sounds like I'm talking about the medium scope. I'm not. I'm talking about other sentient beings. Thinking of your mothers in this condition generate the supreme mind of bodhicitta. In what condition? The one that I've just learned so clearly about myself. I want to be free from 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings. I've learned this so clearly about myself. And I've learned so clearly that ignorance is giving rise to all of this and that I'm being thrown around by my previous actions. I don't even know that guy or gal, and they're, I don't even know what they were doing to make this person come yell at me, but it really wasn't good. And I'm starting to understand this whole process is just like a charade. This then allows me to see that your whole process is the same thing. Just see that it's the same thing. So what is your whole process like? It says that, bless me to see in the here, 87. In the Song of the Spiritual Experience, which Rinpoche taught a lot, the Lamrim Duden, it says, if you do not strive to contemplate the demerits of the truth of suffering, a genuine wish for liberation won't arise. If you do not contemplate the cause of suffering, the door of samsara, knowledge of cutting the root of samsara will not arise. Generating renunciation characterized by a feeling of despondency towards samsara, as well as having knowledge of what binds you to samsara, is imperative. I, the venerable yogi, practice in this manner. If you seek liberation, you should do likewise. So clear what we have to do. So fortunate that we have these so laid out for us. So, okay, so then what's wrong with what's I'm normally thinking? Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. I mean, this is Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Duden, Lama Tsongkhapa's foundation of all good qualities. Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo. We see all of these points are so clear for us and the reason for them, not just, hey, do this. This is what I told you to do. No, do this because it makes sense because it lines you up to be able to really practice a bigger mind and a bigger mind. As we were talking about Thursday, they're keys to bigger and bigger rooms of realization. These allow us to see so clearly how samsara works and then say, yeah, and I'm looking around at all beings and it's working like that for them. So we've been looking at the 6 types of suffering. And for me, this is such an important section because it requires you to look at the big picture. Not that the other ones don't, birth, aging, sickness, and death, meeting with the unpleasant, separating from the pleasant, not getting what you want, the suffering of the appropriated aggregates. That doesn't feel as big to me until I get to the 6 sufferings. When I start to learn about, this uncertainty, and I learn about the insatiability in every lifetime, and I learn about being reborn and shucking off bodies and going from the high realm to the low realm, it starts to make my view backwards and forward so much bigger. And Geshe Dorje Damdu says that real mindfulness, staying in the moment, is being aware of the past and the future and being in the moment in relation to those 2 things. The things I've done have led me up to this circumstance and I want to go there. What do I need to do in that moment to change, whatever it is I'm thinking about or doing in order to head towards where I want to go, because that's not where I am. And where I am I've gotten here somehow. And some of it's good. So I have to take note of that. Like, keep doing those good things that are working, spiritually. But then where I'm at, if I look at my ability to have a disturbed state of mind readily, quickly, it's not where I want to be. So it's this constant evolution, hopefully, that's taking place within moments of my life that are making me more like what I want to become. And the only way that I can buy into any of that is if I look at the big, broader picture to understand, I see all of this stuff in this life that I feel is so certain, I feel is so permanent, I feel is so stable, I feel is the only way it can be. Even if I consider future lives, I consider them in relation to this life. But this part of the Lam Rim shakes me up more. It makes me think, wow, when I'm thinking about future lives, a lot of times I'm thinking of it in a familial unit. I'm even thinking like my dog somehow. Like I'm not looking at it like in these terms that this person who's given me a real hard time may be my mom in like however long it takes for me to die and be thrust into into another position than the one that I'm in. Depending, I know the circumstances would all have to line up. I get it. Just bear with me. But I start to look at things as being a lot bigger. And we're at the 6th type of suffering, which is the one that's one of the hardest ones, the fault of having no companions. I think that's the one we're on, right? Yeah. So we learn that there's no certainty. So, okay. And it's real easy to just say, okay, yeah, my wife can be my enemy and my, enemy will become my lover. And, you start to think like this. You still feel like you have companions. It's not as scary until you get to the 6th suffering. If you really meditate on this stuff, like really meditate on it, not like just read it once and go, yeah. Really meditating on it, you think like, okay, all right, he's eating his mother because he's, had a steak, and okay, that's gross. But I still feel like I've got I still feel like well, someone's there with me. I'm just confused on who they were last time. But then I see that these things just keep shucking off. Okay, well, that person's that, but who's that? And then who will that be? And then who will that be? And then when I look at it at the final point, it's that I'm alone. And this is where, what does alone mean? Well, you're pretty alone if you're just being like blown around like a leaf, and you show up here, and then everything you think is solid, poof, disappears. And then you blow over here, and everything that you think is solid, poof, disappears. You're just this leaf that's blowing around, believing that everywhere that the wind blew it is where it is always. And that there's no wind. It's like we get blown here by the wind, by our winds of our karma, contaminated karmas, afflictions, and the seeds. And we don't feel like there's any wind anymore. Like we feel like this is it, or that we somehow can lock on to all of this. There's some sort of concreteness around me that I can lock onto and carry with me when I die. And it gives me some sort of solace, but that's just concretizing something that's not true. So this blowing around by the wind and blow, into all these different places. And then I get there and I think, this is who I definitely am, this person. You're definitely, and even in this life, we see people that we were so connected to that we suddenly don't even care about at all, or we just dislike greatly. We see this happen. Relationships just changing. We're blowing around even in this life. And then we get into the point and we say, no, this is it. This is solid. This is, I'm this now. I'm a social worker now. I'm a restaurant owner now. I'm the lead singer in a band now. And at that time, it just feels like that's all that there is. But then when I recognize that at any one of those moments, whew, could happen, and then I'm somewhere else, that's a lonely thing, because the person that I'm looking at across from me right now isn't where I'm being blown to necessarily. So I don't have that connection. I don't have that confidence, if you will. And without that confidence, lack of freedom, being blown around by the wind and not making choices, the Buddha, that was the Buddha's biggest problem with it. Lack of freedom is misery. Not being free, being forced over and over again by my karma and my afflictions. And this ignorance is veiling it all. But if I could unveil it just a little bit and ease some of the tension in my mind, then I could really start to figure out how to stop this process that's so unsettling. So we learn there's this uncertainty, and then I'm not satisfied. Okay, I'm not satisfied. Shucking off bodies. I'm still feeling like, okay, the shucking off bodies, that gets me. And then repeated birth. Okay, but then I'll be me again. And then I'm high to the low. But then when I look at this fault of no companions, this gets me. Everybody gets got by something different. So in Nagarjuna's friendly letter, it says, in this way, you will come to grief. Therefore, take light from the lamp of the 3 types of merit. Otherwise, you will go alone into endless darkness that neither sun nor moon can penetrate. The 3 types of merit, virtue of body, speech, and mind, I believe. You will come to grief means know that you must die, as I have indicated before, and take the light of merit. The 3 types of merit refers either to physical, verbal, and mental virtue, or the 3 foundations from which merit arises, generosity, and so on. Endless darkness refers to the darkness of ignorance. In regard to having no companions, so here's the part. The body comes forth whole, yet the bones and flesh that accompany it will break apart and disperse. As this is so, why mention others, such as loved ones? Okay. All right, so myself and my loved ones both have this body that just breaks apart and disperses. You're born alone. You're born into this situation. out of a womb, and then you come to know the people who are around you. You don't know who anyone is. You've just been in an intermediate state, and you see something that makes your mind disturbed, basically. And then you're thrust into if it's a human birth, into a situation where you're trapped, and then you're released when you're born, regular birth. And then you don't know anyone around you. We have this idea, oh, this is, you don't know anyone around you. You're terrified. You're alone. You were in this womb alone. You think in our mind, oh, we were with our mom. We didn't even know. We were in this place, and where am I? And then we're born. Who are all these people? And you're in this intermediate state, all alone, going so fast. That's a part that feels a little bit like, that part feels a little riveting. You're born alone, you die alone, as others can't share this suffering with you. So as much as I support my loved one, when I die, there's nothing that I can't go. I don't go with, even if we die at the same time, we have different karmas. We're not supporting each other in that intermediate process. As others cannot share your suffering, of what use is the hindrance of loved ones. And this means the idea of this static, certain relationship that's going to make me happy, and the only thing that can make me happy. And when you don't have this perspective about the sixth type of suffering, death becomes really even worse, because then you're separating from the person that isn't breaking in front of you. You're breaking, or vice versa. You know what I mean? And if you haven't learned this lesson, that you don't have companions, then that time will be even more terrifying, and will create a projecting karma that will not be hanging around with somebody who is so nice. That's what's so screwed up about karma. That's what's the mess of it. That fear and loathing and bewilderment that will occur from this separation will be what makes you thrown into a position where you don't have someone taking care of you. I know it's so hard to understand that this love, this is what Shantideva is talking about, this love that's really attachment, will set something off that could throw you into hell, where you don't have mom taking care of you, and you only have torturous suffering. How could that be? And this is why what the Buddha came and figured out and said, oh my, I'm going to the woods. I don't think anybody can handle this. This is what he was talking about, not being anybody can really handle this. That if you don't get right with what samsara really is, the things that you think are making you feel so secure will be your downfall, because nothing is secure in samsara. Nothing can be trusted. It's the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Because then nirvana has no end. That's the real happiness. There's no suffering of separating. And there's no pain in the love. There's only bliss in the love. Because you know you're doing everything that's possible to make that person happy as a Buddha. There's no pain in it. There's nothing more you can do. You aren't unsure. You don't have this uncertainty of what's right and what's wrong. So thus, these 6 faults comprise 3 types. In cyclic existence, there is no secure basis that you can count on. 1. However much you may indulge in its pleasures, they will not bring you satisfaction in the end. You have been caught in cyclic existence since beginningless time. I mean, if you could realize that. In cyclic existence, there is no secure basis that you can count on. However much you may indulge in its pleasures, they will not bring satisfaction in the end. Nirvana has no end. Samsara has no beginning, but has an end. If it's in samsara, however much you may indulge in its pleasures, they will not bring satisfaction in the end. You have been caught in cyclic existence since beginningless time. The first of these has 4 parts. So the first, in cyclic existence, there's no secure basis that you can count on. 1, there is no security in obtaining a body, for you discard bodies repeatedly. 2, related to in cyclic existence, there's no secure basis that you can count on. There is no security in agents of help or harm, for they're not certain. In cyclic existence, there's no secure basis that you can count on. There's no security in attaining a wonderful condition, for what is high becomes low. The arrow that's shot in the sky loses its power and sooner or later has to go down. Likewise, the karma that keeps us high can't keep going. It has an end. It's not perpetual. And it goes. In cyclic existence, there's no secure basis that you can count on. There's no security in companions, for at death you go without companions. So, okay, I feel so secure. I have my loved one. I mean, we're experiencing not, these kind of questions right now, when someone gets sick, when someone has the potential to leave. What does that mean? How prepared am I? How prepared are they? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves, because at any moment, it's not like some special circumstance that we have over here at our house. This is life. This is the way that this human basis kind of conducts itself. Birth, aging, sickness, and death. The third of these 4 refers to being reborn again and again. There's no limit to the stream of rebirths. Reflect on suffering under this threefold arrangement as well. So it's saying, here's another way that you can look at it. So that ends the section on the 6 types of suffering. And I think that we covered it pretty well. I feel good about the way that we covered it. And I feel good about that. Hopefully we can take this into our practice and broaden our idea of what this is the superior truth of suffering means. The Buddha said suffering needs to be identified. And Lama Tsongkhapa makes it very clear, if we don't identify it for ourselves, we're not going to be able to develop compassion. Shantideva says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, if we haven't dreamed of our own problem, suffering, how could we ever even think about others? It's not real. We won't be able to completely even relate to others if we don't know all of the potentialities within our own circumstances. Because then when we see someone doing something, if we've studied well, we'll know, oh, okay, well, that's dependent origination over there. Over there, we have a dependent origination coming into the room, a dependent origination. And what does that mean? Well, that means that, I'm playing a part, they're playing a part, and I'm labeling it. And, there's a whole lot going on, and when we can start to see a dependent origination as opposed to, taking it so personally, that's when we start to make progress. Look at this in this greater fashion, and then, recognize that even when somebody is a distasteful person, you think about, some of the horrible characters in humanity, since beginningless time. We've had some characters that were horrible. You just think of your list of the most horrible beings in human history, and think about the fact that those horrible beings, if it was long enough ago, might be your current mother of this life, or your brother of this life, or your sister of this life, or your dog of this life, or the bird you feed in your bird feeder outside of this life. And they were just having a manifestation in that particular circumstance that you can have as soon as you stop breathing, because you have the components in your mind to dependently originate into that kind of horrific being. They're just having a bad dependent arising, just like you will if you don't get it right. The only way you really can, stop crimes that you can only be in control of your own mind. And if you don't like what horrendous beings have done throughout history and are doing in these days, then first of all, you better figure out how to love them, because you and your self-grasping and your self-cherishing attitude will give rise at some point to something just as horrendous. And you will want then someone to be compassionate to you. You'll be out of control and won't even know you're out of control. And this is the big lesson. So if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Prayer for the flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. Thank you, everyone, for your patient listening. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share this information with you. It helps me immensely to be able to talk about it and to be able to relate to it, and kind of any little tiny steps I can make in my mind, or tricks I can use cognitively to try to change the way that I think, is so helpful. And by giving instructions about these things and looking at them in other ways and looking at different texts, it gives me the opportunity to grow. And that's all it's about, for me, is trying to be able to grow, because I see that I don't want to be unhappy. That's all. I don't want to be unhappy. And the only way I can stop unhappiness is growing. And if I'm willing to do a lot of things in life in order to achieve some kind of happiness, do a lot of things, then I should be willing to do something that really works to produce the goal I'm trying to go for, instead of something that doesn't work, which is the door to every pain I have. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Indraketa, he made his vow that conquer and his offspring praise his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. His pure view, free of eternity or destruction, his pure meditation, cleansed of dark, fading, and fog. His pure conduct practiced according to the conqueror's orders. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Learned, since he extensively sought out learning, reverently, rightly applying it to himself. Good, dedicating all for beings in the doctrine. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice from one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Listening to the explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calm and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages practice, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish, combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle. heart essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors like the main guardians of the three beings past, the quick-acting Lord Vaishravana Karmayana, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of the power of its patrons, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. I always smile whenever I think of Rinpoche, just looking at the most simple things and go, oh, man. Seeing it is so profound because it's so profound. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa, to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I really pray that all of you who haven't meet with a qualified spiritual teacher and stick with them and really learn from them. I really, if I could advise anybody to do anything, first check, make sure it's a qualified teacher. That'd be very, very important because there's many teachers in the world right now who are not qualified, giving teachings, talking nonsense, giving basic teachings because that's what people really like and, you know, they'll pay for. But someone who's really qualified, who's not satisfied with partial instructions, who can take you from the beginning of the stages of the path all the way to the final stages, or can get you along the way and refer you to people who can get you to the other way. You know, you really try to connect with teachers who insist upon, you know, presenting you with valuable information contained in the profound view and extensive deeds lineage. So I find it so important. Oh, any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva and purify you as well. Benza Sato Samaya Manubalaya Benza Sato Sina Vajradida Meva Vasutogai Meva Subukai Meva Anuragi Meva Sarvasiti Meva Raja Savakama Suchime Kitam Shion Kuruhum Ha Ha Ho Bhagavan Sarvatatakata Benzama Meva Benza Baba Maha Samaya Safa Ahom Fe. May you always be protected by Paul and Lamo. May we have this Dharma protector in our lives and always be pushing away that which isn't Dharma out of our life. And may the Dharma protectors do this, just always, you know, getting the nonsense away from us and driving us towards what really matters. Jorama 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 Chijikala Jamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong Jorama 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 Chijikala Jamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong Jorama 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 Chijikala Jamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong Jorama 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 Chijikala Jamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong Jorama 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 Chijikala Jamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong Jorama 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 Chijikala Jamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong Jorama 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 Chijikala Jamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong Jorama 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 Chijikala Rajamorama Chidachi Junjor Long Jong. And if we connect with the Holy Lama, like Kensur Geshe Wandak, who's inseparable from Aryatara, then we will have a companion in the Bardo. We will have someone who can help guide us. We will, when we have Paul and Lama, we have a reliable kind of being that could be our companion. And this is why we go for refuge, because these are the beings who can intervene when we're in those states where we have no one, when we're so vulnerable. An omniscient being is the one who can find us, who knows where we are. And if we connect with a really, really compassionate, kind Lama, then they can help guide us, because they're just manifestations, many of them in our world of Buddhas. And when we are a mirror that can reflect something, then it appears. And if we have this faith, it serves as a mirror for the appearance of the Lama, of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, of these beings who the only thing, it says that death will come and nothing can stop it. And we don't know when it's going to happen. And the only thing that can help is Dharma. So the fault of having no companions, the only thing that can help is Dharma, isn't just that our mind state is going to be a certain way at the time of death. It's also that the Dharma, the practitioners, the Buddha, the protectors will be there for us at that time and help guide us through that scary place where no one else could help us. May you have all obstacles removed. Om Vajrapani Harigriva Garuda Hom Fade. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors tourists 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. Did I do the Paul and Lama mantra? I did. I thought so. And then I had Tetsum suddenly. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Tetsum means doubt in Tibetan, like Like I suddenly had like a namduk, like a conceptuality doubt arise. Now we'll do the prayer for the supplication to Namyo Kensar Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. Hopefully he's somewhere, a little baby somewhere right now, making his way back into our lives, or emanating as the mailman, or has been emanating also as Kala, his dog. All bets are off. But wherever you are, Rinpoche, we supplicate you to please keep intervening in our lives, because you did such a good job the first half of my life. I don't ever want it to stop in any of my lives. That intervention was really, really good. So keep intervening. And that's why I wrote this poem. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Kensar Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who's inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om, 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 Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like a teacher who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. Teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now that sound is stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away, understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts in crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you very much, everyone. We will see you Thursday for the class on calm abiding. And Lori said, when are you going to start teaching calm abiding again? So I guess I've been giving a lot of long introductions and not giving Thursday night, tune in. And I said, I have been teaching calm abiding the whole time. This is all applicable. Anyway, so great to see all of you. I hope your mind stays virtuous this week.
Thank you.
That's all we've got is a virtuous mind and hope.